Hi everyone, I'm Nicole STEMX Stitch. Today is February 25th, 2023, and this is Flosstube number 7. As of today, I have stitched 159,681 stitches since I started stitching in 2020, and I have stitched 3,432 stitches since my last video. And also since my last video, I have hit 1,000 subscribers, so thank you so much if you've joined me along this journey, if you've been enjoying my videos, if you subscribed. I really appreciate it. It's been such a crazy journey so far. I didn't expect this to happen so quickly, and I'm really grateful to have this little community here. And to say thank you, I have a little gift that I want to give to someone, so stay tuned till later on in the video if you want to see what that is. On to the weekly progress updates. Since the last video, I have one fully finished object, so if you were watching a few videos ago, you may have seen that I finished the pattern called Lighthouse Day by Tiny Modernist, which I can put a picture of here. And I had already finished the other 3 lighthouses in the past and needed to finish this one again. So I finally fully finished this pattern, and I decided to do a flat fold. So basically I've just folded the fabric over a piece of foam core, and I've used some double-sided tape to stick it onto the back. I've tried to get it decently centered there. And so this will just sit on my bookshelf, you know, leaning up against something. And I like how it looks. It's simple. It's an inexpensive way to finish a piece, and it's pretty easy, especially with the tape. Some people prefer lacing for a variety of reasons, but lately I've been enjoying the tape, even though it might not last quite as long as lacing. Anyway, I know I've had a few people ask me how I finish things in flat fold form, and so when I was finishing this one, I actually filmed like a top-down tutorial. So I have that footage, I just need to do the voiceover to go with it. So if you're curious about how I do flat folds, stay tuned for that. I'm actually traveling in a couple weeks, so I'll probably get that video as like a Flosstube extra all situated before and release it the week that I'm away, towards the middle or end of March. Anyway, so that's my only finish or fully finished for this week. I also don't have any new starts right now, but it is almost the end of February and we have our new Whip Go calls, so I will definitely have some new starts for you next time, which I'm really excited to share. So I'll talk more about those when I get to the plan section. Let's talk about whips. So over the last week, I have continued to work a bit on this pattern called Unexpected Visitors. This one is super cute. I'm doing it 1/1 full cross on 28 count natural linen. So it's pretty small. It's ending up being about 4 by 5 inches. And this has continued to be my commuting or my bus project, but I haven't been working on it in the evenings lately. So I haven't made a ton of progress since last time. I'll hold it up over here, and then I'll also add in a picture here of where I was last time so that you can see the progress I've made. It's mostly in this border area. I finished the white inside. I've started some of the black, nothing too crazy there. And then I'll also throw up a picture of the fully finished piece so you can see how much I have left to go. So really just a bunch of border work left, a lot of black stitching, a lot of good mindless stitching to go. So I'm happy about this one. I'm currently, I have completed 5,001 stitches out of 7,803. So I'm at 64.09%. And I am doing this one with Threadworks flosses that I picked out myself. I started this one on January 30th, and I've gotten, I don't have my tracker. Oh, maybe I have it here. Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 23. So I've done about 25 days of stitching on this piece since I've started it. I will continue working on this piece until the end of February, but the finish is a goal on my WipGo board, so it probably won't be finished until it gets called next, and then I'll finish it up completely. All right, so that was WIP number 1, and I already hit my WipGo goal on that one for this month. That's why I've been working on it. It was to get to 50%. I'm way over that, I'm at 64%. So I'm in no rush to make a ton of progress on that one right now. I'm basically just using it as a commuting project that's small and easy to carry around. Alrighty. So I brought back a WIP that I hadn't worked on for a while. And this is a Heaven and Earth design piece, which was my other WipGo call for the month. So this piece is called Hidden Harbor by Heaven and Earth Designs, and the artist is Andy Russell. I'll put a picture here of the mock-up, and I am doing the color expansion version of this pattern because I thought, why the heck not? And when I looked at the mock-ups of the normal versus the color expansion had a lot more vibrant colors, so I thought it was worth it. And so here is where I am so far on this Heaven and Earth design. So I've been mostly focusing on the sky in the upper left corner, finally getting into some of this like sunset color and into the mountains below. And I will again put this to the side. Let's see how close I can get it. And then I'll put a picture of where I was last time over here so that you can see the comparison, hopefully. So a lot of work in this yellow and orange area, mostly since the last time. And so right now on this piece, I have completed 12,948 stitches out of a total of 135,150, which puts me at 9.58% complete. My goal on WipGo for this one is to get to 10% by the end of February. I think I'll hit that goal. I have a couple days left. I'm planning on working on this for the rest of the weekend. And I'm doing this one on 25 count, easy count Lugana, so the squares are part of the fabric, which I love. And I'm doing it with the called for DMC. And if you see, I'll put you as close as I can get you, and hopefully it's focusing. I'm doing this 2/1 half stitch. And I have been loving doing half stitch on this because it is working up so much faster than I thought it would. I started this on January 2nd, 2023. It was kind of a new year, new start type project. I worked on it. I have worked on it a total of 29 days since I started it. So 29 days, almost a month's worth of stitching has gotten me to 10%, which honestly I don't think is too bad. It's kind of weird to think that if I kept going, I could like possibly get it done. Oh, I just said 10%. Yeah, 10% in a month's worth of stitching. I could probably get this done like under 2 years, when originally when I started I was thinking, oh, I'll have this as a project for like at least 4 years. And I still might, like I'm not necessarily planning to pull it out every month. So far my plan is that it's on my WipGo board 4 or 5 times, so I'll get to like, I think it's on there 5 times, so I'll get to about 25% by the end of the year, and I'm pretty happy with that. So that's the plan for that project. So essentially what you can look forward to next week is seeing more progress on Hidden Harbor, at least up to 10%, so about another half a percent worth of work, and then a little bit more progress on Unexpected Visitors. Those will be the 2 pieces that I'm focusing on until the end of February. And then we got our March WipGo calls today, so I will be switching over on March 1st to 2 different projects. So these 2 will go away for a little bit until they get called in WipGo again. I'm a little bit sad to see them go because I have been enjoying working on both of them, but I'm also really excited to start my new WipGo calls. So let me again very directionally challenged. Put my WIPGO board up here for you to see. So the WIPGO calls for for March are 2 and 22. And for me, that is to get to 75% complete on my project Elegant Lace by WorksbyABC. I am currently around 50% on that one, so I want to get another quarter of the way through it. I'm hoping to finish that one this year. You can see it's on for 2 blocks to get me to that finish. And then my other call is Ocean Wave, which is like a top-down view of some, like the ocean hitting the sand, I think. And I'm also hoping to get to around 1/3 of the way done on that this month. So 1 new start, 1 continuing WIP, but something that I haven't worked on yet this year. And let me throw in the finished picture of Elegant Lace and the finished picture of Ocean Wave so you can see a little sneak preview of those 2. So I'm really excited to get to work on this. Ocean Wave is actually kind of a series. I found this designer, of course, oh gosh, I can't remember their name right now. Let me see if I can find it. I feel bad mentioning a pattern and not mentioning the designer. So Ocean Wave is like a mini series by a designer that has 4 different patterns that are all different, like top-down views of the ocean. Some are like have more waves in them. They're just like, they're really cool patterns in my opinion. And they're all like full coverage. I think they're really gorgeous. I'm planning to do them 2/1 full cross on 18 count, which I think makes them finish to about something like 5x5 or 6x6. So I figured they're small enough that I can probably use them as bust project, so that piece will probably be my bust project for March. And then once I have all 4 of them, I'll finish them in hoops and they'll be a cute little like collection piece to hang on the wall together. I think that will be nice. Let's see. The designer is ZephyrMood on Etsy. So if you're curious to see those patterns, take a look at their shop. They're pretty neat. Alrighty. So those are my plans for March. I mentioned last time that I was thinking of doing this miniature schnauzer pattern that I have done in the past as a new bust project, but it wasn't like on my WIPGO board or anything. I didn't end up starting that yet. It's still in the back of my mind, but I'm not really in a rush to do it. So I might start that, I might not. It kind of just depends on how I like this Ocean Wave project as a bust project. If I want something a little smaller, then I might switch to the miniature schnauzer pattern instead. But TBD, you'll only know when you join me next week. And honestly, I'll probably only know when I film this video next week what I've actually decided to do. Okay, so on to purchases. Nothing major, but I have talked a lot in my videos before and gotten a lot of feedback from various people about how our feelings differ on clamping our Q-snap clamps over our finished stitching. And a lot of people said, oh, I just put felt under them, which I also do. I put like a piece of white felt between my fabric and the clamp. And a lot of people say, oh, yeah, I just put some felt between my clamps and my stitching and it's fine, especially if you wash it up, the stitches puff back up. And that's totally awesome. I have done that. It worked out okay, but I kind of didn't like how they got squished in the process. And I always felt like, oh no, what if I take the clamp off in this time? Like they look really bad, or I've like ripped out some stitches, or they look frayed or something. So I decided that I don't really want to have to clamp my Q-snap over my stitching if I can avoid it. So I have purchased some Q-snap extenders so that I can convert this frame into like I think like a 13 by 17 or something like that, rather than just purchase, oh, and this is an 11 by 11 right now. So rather than just purchasing an 11 by 17 frame or 20 by 20, something like that, I decided I'd just grab some of the extenders so that I can work with what I already have. I only really like to keep one project in a Q-snap at a time anyway, because I don't like to store my projects in the Q-snaps if I can avoid it. So I think it's a better option for me to not have like multiple full Q-snaps to work from, so that I'm not like squishing, or like I'm not just keeping a bunch of things in the Q-snap for long periods of time. So that's my purchase. I haven't gotten it yet. It's scheduled to be delivered today, but as you might have noticed, I'm not in my normal filming location. I actually forgot to mention that earlier in the video. I am currently at my partner's house. We hang out mostly on the weekends because we're both really busy with work during the week. And so I stay here a lot on the weekends, or he'll come to my place. And so I'm not at my house right now, so it might have arrived, but I haven't gotten it personally yet. So I will show you my new Q-snap setup next week when I have those pieces. I had a little bit of Q&A from the comments. Last time I asked if people knew how I could add overlays to my videos in real time rather than having to do it all after I film the video, because that's a little bit time consuming. And I got some really great recommendations of using some streaming software, either OBS or XSplit Broadcaster. Sounded like two popular ones that people liked to use. Thank you so much if you dropped any comments with hints and tips on how to do that. I really appreciate it. I have downloaded OBS and I've started messing around and trying to figure out how to use it, but I couldn't get all the glitches sorted out before I started filming this video. I was getting like a weird echo happening. So anyway, I'm definitely looking into doing that, so that it frees up a little bit of my editing time, but I need a little bit more time to work out the technical issues. Someone also mentioned to me that they use Notion to track their cross-stitching and referred me to a couple other cross-stitchers. One was FrizzieLizzieStitches, and another cross-stitcher who actually shared her Notion templates with me, which was really, really awesome. Gosh, I want to find their name because I want to give them credit, so give me 1 second. I think Notion is such a cool tool. I've seen a lot of people use it really successfully, but it feels like a big learning gap for me. I haven't had the time to put into something like that yet. So I might switch over from Excel to Notion sometime in the future, but I probably won't do that anytime soon. I think I'd need a little bit of time to just get used to Notion as a system. It's really it's a really cool tool because there's endless possibilities of what you can do with it, but for me that also means that it's a lot of mental energy to get that up and ready. So I haven't figured that part out yet. Oh yes, here we go. Okay, it was Angie, who I think goes by the Shoemaker on Instagram. So Angie, thank you so much. I really, really appreciated you sharing that information with me. Alrighty, so on to a couple questions I got. Somebody asked me what these little rubber pieces that I use to hold back my excess fabric are called. They look like this. They're actually called spool savers, and they're totally not meant to hold back excess fabric. They're meant to put around spools of thread, like sewing spools of thread, to keep the loose end of the thread from unraveling if the spool doesn't have a notch for you to tuck it into. But I found that they work really well with Q-snaps because Q-snaps are that kind of same rounded shape to hold back your fabric onto the Q-snap. And they even work with other things that aren't quite the same shape, so it works okay with my square frame as well. And I like it. It helps me keep my extra fabric out of the way. I know other people use magnetic zip ties, I think they're called. They're basically two magnets held together by this silicone flexible bit, so you can snap them together around your fabric. There's a lot of great ways to manage your excess fabric, but the spool savers are something that I got for relatively inexpensive in a big pack on Amazon. So if you're looking for those, I'll drop the link down below in the description box. And then I also got a question asking if I could clarify how I stitch without having to flip my piece over to end the threads. And this is really only something that I do on my Heaven and Earth designs, or like my big full coverage pieces. It saves a lot of time in my opinion, and it makes the process of stitching a lot nicer, especially because I'm usually stitching with this on a frame, so flipping it back and forth gets a little bit more difficult. So basically what I do is I'll stitch and stitch until I get to the end of a thread. Here I have a thread on my needle now. So if I was either done with this thread, or I was like if I had too little thread to effectively stitch with anymore, I would basically just have the thread on the back after my finished stitch, and then I would say, okay, I'm stitching like here, and I want to make sure that this thread gets caught on the back. So I'm just going to pull it down to some space, you know, 2 or 3 blocks away from where I was just stitching, pull the thread up, and then basically just leave the end of the thread hanging there, which is why I have so many loose hanging threads off the bottom of my work. I might drive some people crazy. It doesn't bother me too much. I much prefer to having to flip over my work and finish every thread when I'm done with it. And then as I work down and fill in this space, I'll inevitably have stitched over the back of this thread, or I'll have stitched over this thread on the back of the work. And so once I fill in this space and then this thread is in my way, I'll just snip it off as close to the fabric as possible. And as I fill in those stitches down here, I'll make sure that the end of the thread gets pushed through to the back. And by then it will be well and truly secured onto the back of the fabric. So that is my method. I know a lot of other people have different methods that are slightly more organized, but this is basically, it's kind of like using the parking method, but for the ends of your threads. And rather than putting them in a specific location you need them, you're just like parking them far enough away that they get stitched over, and then cutting them off when you get to them rather than using them to stitch when you get to them, if that makes any sense. So that's all the Q&A that I have today, but I have a special segment like I usually do in today's Flosstube. And so last week I said that my special segment in Flosstube number 7 would be me sharing a little bit more about my life as a PhD student. So I thought I would spend a little bit of time talking to you all about why I'm doing a PhD, what the process is like, and how my experiences have been so far. All right, so to start, why am I even getting a PhD anyway? So the reason I'm getting a PhD is because I have really enjoyed the process and experience doing scientific research, which I got my first taste of as a high school student during a summer internship at a local university, and then continued to do throughout undergraduate for 4 years in a lab at my undergraduate university. And I have truly enjoyed doing research and have thought for a few years now that scientific research would be a major part of my future career, either as a professor at a university running my own lab, or if I decided to go into industry, working at a biotech company or something like that, that I would want to be on the research side of things. And really, in either of these cases, you ultimately need a PhD to truly move up in both of those areas. You really can't be a college professor, especially one that runs their own lab independently, if you don't have a PhD. And in industry, you can do some slightly lower titled scientific research positions, but moving up in the company often becomes very difficult if you don't have a PhD. And really the reason for that is a PhD is basically a really extended learning experience where you're thrown into the deep end in some research project and tasked with basically figuring it out, making it work, and then ultimately publishing and presenting and defending the work that you've done. So most of the people in the science and engineering space view PhDs as kind of like proof that you have figured out how to be a good researcher, that you know how to do scientific experiments, that you're a relatively independent researcher, and that you can present your work and defend its quality to a group of other scientists. So that's why I'm getting a PhD. And I kind of knew that that would be my track somewhere midway through undergrad, when I was like, definitely want to keep doing research, and I know that the next step is that I'm gonna need a PhD if I want to keep doing that. So I graduated from Cal Poly for undergrad in 2020, which means I was that weird cohort of students that graduated during the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic. And so my graduation and getting into grad school experience was a little bit strange. It started off perfectly normal. I applied to grad school in at the end of 2019. So the application cycle ends mid-December, I think. And then I started getting accepted to grad schools in early 2020. Basically that process is you usually get accepted and then you get like flown out to the university, or you drive out to the university and you do kind of like a visit, interview, recruitment weekend, some combination of that. So you're meeting with faculty and interviewing. You're also getting a chance to see the university and the program and what it's like. And it's kind of a two-way street. So they're trying to see if you're a good fit for their program, and you're trying to see if you're a good fit for their program. And then usually after that interview process, you'll get an official offer from the university if they liked you, which is pretty common. So about 2/3 of the way through that process, I had visited a few universities, I had gotten a few offers, and I had a couple left to visit, and those visit weekends were planned right before we all got thrown into lockdown. So my last 2 visit weekends were supposed to be at the University of Washington and at Yale. And I didn't get to go to either of them in person, and they were also my top 2 choices for grad school. So they were the 2 schools I was most interested in going to. So that was a little strange. I spent all this time being recruited by a bunch of universities that I got to visit in person that I didn't even end up considering in my final choice. And then I was deciding between 2 universities that I had never been to in person. And ultimately, as you know, I decided to attend the University of Washington, and I think that it was a really good choice for me. I really like UW. I really like the research that happens in the bioengineering department here. I love the lab that I'm in, and so it's been a really good choice for me, but it was an extremely difficult decision at the time. So in about September of 2020, I moved out to Seattle, and I started my PhD. And what that looks like at the beginning is you're doing something called rotations. And so you're usually taking some classes, and about 20 hours of your week, 20 hours of your time per week is dedicated towards classwork. And then the other 20 hours of your week is dedicated towards trying out some labs. And so the way that my program did it at the time, because of the pandemic, was that we had 6-week-long rotations in at least 2 different labs, and you could test out a third if you needed, if you didn't find a good fit. So I spent the first 6 weeks, starting in mid-September, working in the lab that I am currently in. And then the 6 weeks after that, I was trying out a different lab that was kind of more immunology based, and learning what they did for research. And that process is like, you usually get kind of like a small project or a task that you'd like to get done in your rotation, but a lot of what you're doing is learning the techniques of the lab, getting a sense for the type of work that they do, getting a sense for the culture in the lab, meeting the other grad students, seeing how their experiences were, seeing how their relationship with their mentor or their advisor is, and deciding if that lab ultimately is a good choice for the next 5 years of your life. And so I ended up choosing to join the first lab that I rotated in, and I officially joined that group right before Christmas in 2020. Around that time, I was also trying to get funded. So the program, most STEM programs are funded programs in the world of PhDs. And what that means is that when you're accepted to these programs, you're given an offer that includes them paying for your tuition and also paying you a stipend for your work at the university, and usually covering some health insurance. And that is common across basically any STEM field. If you're getting a PhD in the US, you should not be paying tuition and you should be getting paid for your work, which is a common misconception. Most people think, oh, you're doing a PhD, like how can you afford to be a broke student that's not getting paid for even more time than you did in undergrad? But I am getting paid. We are all getting paid for our work. I have to say it is not as good of compensation as I could get in the biotech space, even with just an undergraduate degree. But for now, it does the job, and I'll leave it at that. So while we did have funding, there are fellowships that you can earn. They're basically like scholarships for graduate students that help pay for you to do your research at the university. So rather than your advisor needing to pay you out of their grant money or the university needing to pay you, you're kind of like bringing in your own money, which is, it looks really good for you to have earned that fellowship. And in my department, we also get a little bit of a raise if we bring fellowship money to the university. So at the same time as I was doing my rotations, I was also applying for fellowships. That is typically like a personal statement and a research proposal that you have to write about like what work, basically proposing a novel and unique project that you could accomplish while you're funded on the fellowship. So I applied to a couple of fellowships and I ended up receiving the National Science Foundation's Graduate Research Fellowship, which is a government-based fellowship program that is pretty prestigious, and they award a few thousand of them a year. If you've met other students in the like science and engineering spaces, the NSF National Science Foundation Fellowship is one of the most common ones that people will apply to and be awarded. So I was lucky enough to get that funding, which also helped me a bit when I was going to figure out what I would work on, what project I was going to start working on that I would be focused on for the next 5 years of my life. Because when you come in with outside funding like that, it helps your advisor give you a little bit more flexibility in what you can study. And so after I officially joined the lab and came back after the holiday break, I was finishing up the project that I had started in my rotation and also starting a different project that I was interested in, and basically seeing how those projects went, doing experiments, trying to see if things were working, trying to see if they were too complicated, if I needed to change anything, and all of that. It's a really strange experience to get started in a new lab. There's always so much to learn. Anything from like, I can't find this piece of equipment that I need, to I don't understand how this process works and you have to learn a lot of things on the fly. At the same time, you are taking classes. In my program, you typically are taking classes for the first 2 years of a 5-year program. So your time is split between your classwork and your research. And my goal was to finish my classes as quickly as I could. It's really weird to be a PhD student because everybody thinks you're a student, but classes are kind of secondary to the research that you're doing. And so, especially once you finish your classes, which I have now, I'm currently in my 3rd year of the program, I'm not actually taking any classes. I spend most of my time working in a lab. I spend some of my time teaching classes. And so I don't really feel like a student as much as I feel like an employee of the university in a way, and an employee of the lab that I work for. And so that's also a little bit strange to explain to people. Like, we are getting paid because we are essentially employees of the university, and we are not just students taking classes for 5 years. We're doing a lot of other things. We're even teaching undergraduate students at our universities. And it turns out that at the University of Washington, graduate students actually teach a majority of the time that the undergraduate students spend in classes. So all of the sections that students are getting like one-on-one help with their work, everything like that is taught by graduate students. So my goal was to finish my classes as quickly as possible, while also finding ways to get involved in outreach, to get involved in science communication, and to get involved in mentorship. And so I was trying to balance all of those things, hoping, oh my gosh, I just need to finish my classes so that I can at least get one thing off my plate. And I did that right before I needed to take my qualifying exam. And so if you haven't heard of this before, a qualifying exam is basically one of the major milestones in a PhD program. It's basically to check that you're on track and kind of like give you the go-ahead to keep going with your work. And so in the format of these exams varies greatly between institutions and between even just different departments at one institution. And it sounds like a test, right? It sounds like some scary written test you have to take, like the SAT or the GRE. It's not. It's a different type of scary test. And so what ours is you get 3 weeks release from research to, on your own, write a research grant. So to propose another completely unique and novel idea for a research program that would take about 3 years to complete. And you need to write that up. You also have to write up a research update, so everything you've worked on to date in your research lab, and then you present both of those. It's an hour-long presentation, 30 minutes for each, to your committee. If you haven't heard of a committee before, it's basically a couple different faculty in your department or in your general research area that have signed on to evaluate your work and decide whether or not you should move on to the next step of your program. And so my committee had my personal advisor on it, as well as 3 other faculty members who were generally in my research area. I presented my work to them for an hour, and then the audience that was there to listen was dismissed, and I had a one-on-one session of those faculty members on my committee, basically asking me any and all questions they could think of about my work that I proposed and the work that I had completed so far, to see basically my proficiency with answering questions and my knowledge in those areas. And that went on for about an hour's worth of me answering questions. So that's essentially what the qualifying exam is. It's these really big written documents, followed by a presentation, followed by basically a grilling session of answering questions from your committee, at the end of which they send you out of the room for an undisclosed amount of time, and the committee talks to each other and decides whether or not you passed. In our program, most people do pass their qualifying exams. It's got like over a 98% pass rate, but it's still nerve-wracking to be sitting outside waiting for them to decide your fate, and then they bring you back into the room and tell you whether or not you passed your exam. So that was a really big milestone in my program. There's very few of these like really official check-in steps, and that is one of them. It happens after you finish the 2nd year of your program. And then after that, there's not really another check-in for 2 more years. You have to form an official committee. It's called your supervisory committee. It can vary a little bit from your qualifying exam committee. It doesn't have to be the exact same people. And you are hopefully meeting with your supervisory committee at least once a year. And then at the end of your 4th year, you have your general exam, which is honestly a little bit more relaxed than your qualifying exam. because rather than writing a completely unique research proposal that's unrelated to your current work, which we have to do for the qualifying exam, you're just presenting the work that you're doing so far and basically your plan for finishing your PhD. So it's a little bit easier because it's something that it's all based on stuff that you really have like spent all of your time working on for the last 4 years. So after finishing my qualifying exam, finishing all of my classes, I felt like I had a lot more free time to truly focus on my research, which was great, but also to get involved in those kinds of extracurricular things that are still really important to my growth as a graduate student. So I got more involved in high school level science outreach with a group of graduate students at the University of Washington called STEM Pals. So we run a variety of activities from soldering to growing bacteria to VR to the latest one was like a bunch of physics demos for mostly high school, but sometimes other K through 12 schools in the Seattle area. So that's been really fun. I also got more involved in science communication work for the last class that I took to complete my class requirements. It was a class called Communicating Science to the Public Effectively, and if you've been on my channel before, you might remember that that is also the class that I'm teaching now. And this class is super neat because it's completely run by graduate students, and the way that it works is you take the class and then you have the opportunity, if selected, to teach the class the next year. And so I love this class so much. Science communication is something I'm really passionate about, and I decided to apply to teach the class this year, which I am doing. And beyond just running this class, we also run a variety of workshops. So it's really a group of graduate students who have all completed science communication, this science communication class, who come together to try to keep science communication alive and well at the university. On top of that, I also work with our union. We are unionized graduate students and academic student employees at the University of Washington. And so I do a lot of work with our union, making sure that our contracts are fairly enforced and that we can try to get raises as graduate students, since we are paid, but not necessarily paid very competitive salaries for the area that we live in. And I also started mentoring undergrads. So I mentor undergrads who are trying to get involved in research and trying to understand like how to join a research group at the university. And I also mentor my own undergrad who does research with me. So she has her own smaller research project, and I help her plan and teach her different techniques and help her plan experiments and all of that. So I am very closely mentoring her through the end of her undergraduate research. Along the way, you're hopefully writing papers and publishing papers about your research. And so I have been writing a paper for a while now, in the process of going back and forth on edits with my advisor on that. So that's something that's always going on in the background. And you also have to figure out how to cope with a lot of failure. For example, for the last about 6 months, I've been starting a new project and it truly just has not been working, and I have been troubleshooting for 6 months. And that's the kind of thing about a PhD program that makes me really understand why people say, oh, a PhD is a marathon, not a sprint. You have to know how to pace yourself. You have to know when you need to take time off, when you need to pivot, when you need to try something different. And those long months of nothing working can be super demotivating, but they're really part of science. Science is a slow process. It's complicated. There's a lot of little things that can go wrong all the time. There's a lot of things that are surprisingly out of your control as well. I mean, that's something that I'm always trying to come to terms with throughout my experience in scientific research. So what's left? Like, what am I doing for the next 2.5 years until I graduate? Well, I mentioned that I have to form a committee and have committee meetings. I'll have to complete my general exam where I present my research project from the last 4 years of my graduate school. work. I'll also hopefully continue to find more teaching opportunities so that I can become a better teacher. I'll continue publishing papers, and eventually, once I kind of get the go-ahead from my committee and my advisor, I will defend my thesis work. So I will have my thesis document, which is typically a like over 100-page document, and I will present all of my PhD work to my committee and to the audience there. And then it's another grilling session of an hour or so of questions with your committee before they tell you whether or not they will award you your PhD. So that's really the life as a PhD student. It's probably not exactly what you expected. Not exactly what I expected, to be honest. It's not just classes, it's not just research. It's also outreach, it's also teaching, it's also mentorship, it's also all these things, like, and you're trying to build a lot of skill sets at the same time and make connections and figure out what you want to do for the rest of your life. I'm gonna leave the future of what I want to do after grad school to another time, because I know this video is already getting a bit long and I've been rambling for a while. But overall, I've been really enjoying graduate school. It's difficult, but it's also really rewarding. And the biggest thing that I've been working on throughout this is just finding a good work-life balance. And I feel really grateful that at the University of Washington, there's a lot of grad students who have really put their work-life balance first. There's kind of this like pervasive idea that graduate students have to just be working 24/7 to get their PhDs. And I really think that that's unhealthy and not a very kind way to treat someone who's going through a 5-year program, to expect them to work oftentimes like over 60 hours a week and things like that. Working weekends, working holidays, all of these things that you might have heard about graduate students not having any work-life balance. But here there's a lot of wonderful grad students who work super hard but also know how to balance that with the things they like to do outside of lab. So many people here love skiing and exploring in the outdoors, and have all these other hobbies that they really nurture along with their graduate work. And so I really appreciate that culture at the university, and it's been really good for me personally. All right, so that's a little bit of a glimpse into life as a graduate student. I'll give you a couple life updates since last week. This past Thursday, the outreach group that I mentioned, STEM Pals, did a science night at a local elementary school, and we ran a room full of physics demos. So if you've ever been to a science museum like the Exploratorium in San Francisco, we did a lot of fun little demos like that. We have another one of these events coming up next week, so I've been really loving doing that. Getting a little break, getting out of the lab, getting to interact with some younger students and get them excited about science. And like I said, I want to do a little bit of a giveaway to say thank you to everybody who has subscribed to my channel so far. I cannot believe that I've hit 1,000 subscribers in this short of a period of time. So I thought, I've been showing this piece a lot, and like I said, I converted it to ThreadWorks. So what I did was I bought ThreadWorks from my local LNS, and this is how much I still have of these flosses. It's so much. I bought the 20-yard skeins because that's what they had stocked. So I want to have someone else be able to do this project. So my giveaway will include enough of these 3 thread colors for you to complete the Unexpected Visitors pattern in whatever size you want. You don't have to stitch it tiny. I'll send you enough to stitch it, you know, on 18 or 16 or 14 count, whatever your preference is. And I will also buy a copy of the pattern for you. So that will be the giveaway, floss and the pattern for Unexpected Visitors. I'm not able to give the fabric, but I think fabric is a really personal choice, so I'll leave that up to you anyway. So if you want to be eligible for this giveaway of the Unexpected Visitors pattern and floss that I'm using, I need you to do a couple of things. First, I need you to be a subscriber to this channel. I need you to be at least 18 years old. I need you to fill out the Google form that is in the description below. That makes me sure that the winner I choose is someone that I can reach out to and get their contact information, their address from, and all of that, so that I don't have to go hunting for people who won and then never respond to me. So you have to fill out that form to be eligible to win. And then I need you to use a keyword in your comment so that it can randomly select a comment. So if you want to be entered in this giveaway, please leave a comment below with the word unexpected. I'll put that on the screen. Use the word unexpected in your comment below and you will be entered. Please fill out the Google form below. I will use their YouTube random comment picker to randomly select a winner, but if that selected person hasn't filled out the Google form, I will have to pick a new winner. And then at some point I will ship this to you. So I will draw the winner before my next video next week. And please don't leave like giveaway, don't write giveaway on your comment, don't say any of that, just use the word unexpected. YouTube flags things, and this is my first time trying it, so I'm trying to make sure I got all the details ironed out. Alrighty, so that's all I have today. Come back next week. I'm planning to do February wrap-up since we'll be at the end of February, so I'll give you what I did in February, how many days I stitched, how many stitches I stitched, all that good data. And then also my special segment for the next video. I want to share with you the patterns that I have already bought that I'm planning to stitch, and maybe also a little sneak peek of the patterns that are on my favorites list on Etsy, all the patterns that I haven't bought that I want to stitch at some point. So I hope you have a lovely rest of your weekend. I hope you have a great week next week, and I hope to see you in next week's video. Have a great day. Bye.